adjustment on October 1st, 2020. Madam Secretary, do we have a quorum?
Christina Hill,
Yes.
Clay Thomas.
Here.
Lee Lawrence.
Here.
Brad Stanley.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Large, would you read the ethics law announcements?
Board members are reminded that if with respect to any matter or any person coming before the board today, you have received a gift or a loan, you have a pecuniary interest, you have a commitment in a private capacity, such as a family, employment, business, or similar relationship, or you provided representation or counseling before an agency to a person or entity for compensation within the last year on a matter being considered, you must disclose that gift, loan, interest, commitment, or prior representation at the time the matter is being considered. And you must furthermore abstain from deliberation or voting on the matter. If it is clear that the gift, loan, interest, commitment, or prior representation would materially affect the independence of judgment of a reasonable person. Board members are also reminded that under the Board of Adjustment rules, if you've had contact outside this meeting with any persons interested in a matter coming before the board today, you should disclose the nature of that contact at this meeting.
Thank you. Should I read the appeal procedure?
Roger, are you prepared to do the appeal procedure, or should I?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Wonderful. Most decisions rendered by the Board of Adjustment are appealable to the Board of County Commissioners. If you disagree with the decision of the Board of Adjustment and you want to appeal its action, you may do so in writing within 10 calendar days from the date that the decision being appealed is reduced to writing, filed with the Secretary of the Board of Adjustment, and mailed to the original applicant in the proceeding being appealed, in accordance with Washoe County Code. Please call planning staff immediately at 328-3600 for more information on the appeal procedure and application fee.
Thank you. Okay, general public comment and discussion thereof. Any person is invited to speak on any item. Should I turn this on?
I think you're on.
You're on.
Action may not be taken on any matter raised during this public comment period until the matter is specifically listed on an agenda, such as an action item. Madam Secretary, do we have any general public comments?
We have no public comment.
Okay. Guess we take a vote whether or not to approve the agenda. Would anybody like to make a motion? Mr. Stanley? Any second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Thomas? Motion passes. Possible action to approve July 24, 2020 and August 6, 2020 draft minutes.
Madam Chairman, you actually need to call a vote on the agenda. You had a first and a second, but you need to call the vote.
Okay, let's vote on approving the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, I believe the agenda is approved. Okay, possible action to approve July 24th and August 6, 2020 draft minutes. Is there any discussion? Yes?
Yeah, a bit of discussion. I was not available for the 24th meeting, or excuse me, the August 6th meeting, so my vote will not count regarding that. But only the 24th of July meeting will it count.
You can't, Madam Chairman, I'm so sorry. You can, Mr. Lawrence, you can vote on the draft minutes as written. You don't have to abstain from them just because you were not here.
Great.
I found a couple of mistakes on the July 24th agenda in order to hold the secretary about it, so that has been fixed. Anybody else have any comments? One was instead of existing schools on Crossbow, they were exiting onto Crossbow. And the other one was the last page about something definitive for those who don't, it should be comply instead of apply. So those are the only corrections I had. So do we take a vote to approve
You
the
need to
minutes?
call for a motion.
Oh, do you have another one, Mr. Stanley?
No, I move that we approve the minutes.
Okay, is there
As
a
amended.
second?
Second?
Okay. Mr. Lawrence, second, and then, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So the draft minutes are approved. Okay, public hearing. The Board of Adjustment may take action to approve with or without conditions, modify and approve with or without conditions, or deny a request. The Board of Adjustments may also take action to continue an item to future agenda. The first item is variance case WPVAR 20-0004, merit rear yard setback reduction. And the staff is Roger Pelham. Roger, would you like to introduce this item?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. For the record, Roger Pelham with Washoe County Planning. I am going to attempt to share my screen here. And I believe you should be seeing my PowerPoint presentation at this time. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
Very good. This variance request is by the merits. It is WPVAR 20-0004. The request is to reduce the rear yard setback from 20 feet to 9 feet 9 inches to facilitate the construction of a new garage. This would be a detached garage on a piece of land upon which their home is located. This constitutes a reduction of 10 foot 3 inches. This parcel of land is located within the Eagle Canyon area of northwest Spanish Springs, as is shown here on this vicinity map. This is an overhead photo of the subject site. You can see the existing dwelling there in the middle. The subject site is outlined in blue. The proposed garage is going to go in this area. You should be seeing my cursor going in a little circle there. I would note that to the rear of the parcel, that is to say to the north, there is a large drainage way. That's about 50 feet in width. You should be seeing a site plan which shows the encroachment requested by the applicant. They are not requesting that the entire back of the garage encroach into the setback, but rather just one corner of it. You should be seeing elevations sort of front and side. This is a relatively standard detached garage shop structure. The only sort of thing that might be slightly out of the ordinary is it's relatively tall. It is above 12 feet in height. Were the structure 12 feet or less in height to the midpoint of the eaves, it could actually be located as proposed by the applicant. But because of the height, this one cannot. Variances are jurisdictional. That is to say, the Board of Adjustment must make certain findings in order for an approval to be granted. Perhaps most important among those findings is a finding of hardship. Hardship is limited to essentially three things: exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape, exceptional topographic conditions, or another extraordinary and exceptional situation or condition. I'm going to go through each one of these individually. In the medium density suburban zone, the minimum lot width is 80 feet. This parcel is approximately 115 feet in width average. This parcel is not exceptionally narrow. Again, exceptional shallowness, being a minimum of 80-foot dimension. This is approximately 189, so it is not exceptionally shallow. As you saw on the the overhead photo and the site plan, this parcel of land is sort of pie-shaped, more or less wedge-shaped. which is not uncommon, particularly at the end of cul-de-sacs. And again, relatively common in this area. The applicant did provide justification for their variance request, and they note this is from their application. Can I stop? Are you seeing a typed page?
Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. I'm always a little dubious of technology, so here we go. And
As you should be.
the justification provided by the applicant is here on the third line and simply says, due to the shape of my parcel, we are respectfully requesting consideration of a variance to the rear yard setback. They go then to describe the variance specifically itself. The shape of the parcel is essentially the justification provided by the applicant for the variance request. Back to the findings themselves. The finding of exceptional topography. This is essentially a flat parcel within, again, a developed subdivision. This photograph does show the proposed location for the garage, and that is called out. If you can see the stakes here, and then this orange paint. This is where the applicant is proposing to place the garage. It's flat. There are no exceptional topographic features to contend with. This is a letter from the neighboring property owner, the closest to the garage, Mr. Jason Cutlip. And on about the fourth line here, he is in favor of the request to move the garage closer to the rear fence. The variance will move his garage further out of sight from my northwest windows. So that is the only public comment that I received during the review of this project. Public notice. This was sent to 77 affected property owners within the required radius, as you can see here on the map. This was also considered by the Spanish Spring Citizen Advisory Board, who did unanimously express a recommendation for approval of the variance based upon the fact that there is the drainage to the rear of the parcel. And actually, you can see that drainage as a separate parcel of land here, again, to the north of the subject site. This was sent to all appropriate reviewing agencies, and I actually received no conditions of approval. None had any comments of relevance. Again, I would come back to the findings. Special circumstances must be found. If special circumstances are found, then no detriment, no special privileges, use authorized, and then no effect on military installation. I have comments on each one of these. I believe it's pages 4 and 5 of the staff report. But after a thorough analysis and review, denial is recommended for the failure to be able to find a hardship of the land that forces the variance request. Should this board find that there is an exceptional hardship and choose to approve the variance, I have prepared conditions of approval for your consideration. With that, I have a possible motion, and I am available for any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Roger. Is the applicant present to make a presentation?
I have a question for Roger.
Pardon me?
I have a question for Roger.
Okay.
Pelham.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Okay, Roger, just a couple questions. Excuse me. What are they going to park in this garage? Was there a determination of what it's going to be used for?
When I met on site with the applicant, he indicated that sort of working on cars was sort of a family hobby. So like classic cars.
Okay, so nothing in the realm of an RV or parking a boat in there or anything of that nature? Was there any discussions? I mean, I will ask the applicant this if they are available, Roger, but I just wanted to just get an early kind of take on that?
You know, I believe they did say something about a recreational vehicle.
Okay, that's fine, and I'll wait for that. Okay, so the other thing is, that I wanted to ask is, the roof height at the peak of the roof, if it was 12 feet instead of, and I don't know what this peak of this roof is gonna be, it's 16 to the top plate feet. What is the top of the roof distance? None of the diagrams show that.
Right, I believe it's 24. I could be wrong.
20 footish, okay, then that's what I was thinking, 4 to 5 feet above. So if it were in fact 12 feet, there would be no issue with the setbacks and what we're concerning today, is that correct?
That is correct. And let me be very clear on how we measure building height. It is not the peak, but rather the midpoint. So halfway between the top of the wall and the peak of the roof. So essentially, a garage that is, say, 10 feet at the wall and 14 feet at the peak would have an average of 12 feet. And that's actually how we measure that.
Okay, I didn't know that. Okay, I just was not sure about that. Okay, so let me see if I had anything else. I think that's what I had for you at this point in time. Thank you.
Certainly.
Are there any other questions? Mr. Stanley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Roger, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. How about yourself?
Well, thanks. You know, I know that you normally, after seeing you about 1 million times roughly in various CAB meetings and so forth, like to explain the nuances as best people are able to receive them about this sort of thing. Were you able to sit in on the Zoom meeting for this?
For the CAB, yes, I was.
Okay, and you explained to them, I would assume, as you normally do, that this doesn't look like it's going to meet, doesn't look like it's going to easily fit within code.
Yes, I did. I expressed something to the effect that we were looking for the Citizen Advisory Board for their expertise in their neighborhood.
Right.
But staff would be looking particularly at the findings of fact. Yes.
Gotcha. Is there anything about the drainage code itself, something about the drainage ditch essentially, that that would preclude being, that specifies how close something can be?
There is not.
Okay.
That drainage facility is on its own separate parcel of land.
Right.
Butts the rear of this parcel of land and many others on both sides.
Okay. And Roger, are there any, looking at the overheads, there appear to be a couple of instances within 4 or 5 houses on the same side, it looks like it might be south depending on the map, of the drainage area that have some sort of structure pretty close to their lot line. Is that just a kind of a optical illusion, or are there some either unvarianced or varianced? I mentioned particularly what appears to be, and again, I didn't Google Earth this up myself, but on parcel number XXX5 and parcel XXXX05, excuse me, 12 and 05, there appear to be structures pretty near the, or very near, the, well, appears to be the demarcation line. Do you know what the scoop is on those guys?
Certainly. Those are all legal structures. I looked at several of them. All of those structures are 12 feet or less in height.
Gotcha.
When a structure is 12 feet or less in height, as we were just discussing a moment ago, that's to the midpoint. A detached accessory structure may be placed within 5 feet of the side and rear property lines in all of our all of our residential regulatory zones here in Washington.
Right. And I understand. Did you mention, if I may, did you kind of suggest at any point, either in the CAB meeting or afterwards, or any consultation with the applicant, that this 12-foot situation that would seem to remedy their problem?
I did. I don't want to hit this too hard, but
Yeah,
I can honestly say that I discouraged the applicant from applying. In my opinion, good customer service is letting someone know when they don't have a
Right.
reasonable chance for
Yeah.
success.
As I've mentioned, I've seen you do that before very effectively, so that's the reason I ask.
Me
It's
too.
kind of a layup question. And the last one, if you don't mind, for
Certainly.
me, is there's a piece of language here that I'd like to hear what is intended to mean, or what you think it means, or something like that. It's on, for reference, it's on page 9 of the 11 pages, and it's under staff comment on required findings, and it's item number 1, very near the bottom part of that. And I'll just quote part of it, and it says, "An exceptional situation or condition in the property and/or location of surroundings." Okay. Would that count things like a drainage ditch, and how would that impact this particular situation? I mean, drainage ditches seem a little, I don't have one, I don't think, so they may be not consistent with everybody.
Certainly. What I would say is this. The code provides us with several specific conditions which equal a hardship. Now, one of those may be the location of the surroundings. In my opinion, having a drainage ditch on the other side of the property line does not constitute a hardship. There's nothing on their parcel that prohibits them from constructing this same garage, either shorter in its current location, shorter closer to the rear property line, or 10 feet further towards the house.
Right.
Now, that is inconvenient, perhaps. That doesn't rise to the level of a physical hardship, in my opinion.
Gotcha. And just in case this kind of thing ever pops up again, what would be a case of, I didn't realize that the other and/or location of surroundings would be surroundings on the property itself. So what would be an example of one where that would be an issue other than the standard variance clause?
Certainly, if that drainage ditch ran across a corner of their property and we're taking a chunk of their land for that water conveyance, that could certainly be, well, conceivably at least, that would be a hardship.
Okay. So the key is on their property?
It really is.
Gotcha. All right.
And I would bring you back to the language of the condition itself, or I should say the finding itself. Let me scroll down so I make sure I get it verbatim. And it is, pardon me while I wrestle with technology.
Yeah, I actually, thank you. I think you've taught us all pretty well about what the typical big three and the variance is, but this one I hadn't seen before.
Sure. And so what I would come back to, special circumstances applicable to the property. That really sort of constrains us to the property itself.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much for that
Certainly.
enlightenment. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Any other questions for Roger?
Madam Chair?
Yes?
May I? Mr. Pelham, thank you. I do have a quick question for you. Do you happen to know the house size versus the garage size?
One moment, please.
I guess what I'm asking for is I just want to ensure that the garage is actually not larger than the house, because I believe that would fall also under a special Washoe County code.
Yeah, it is not. The garage is proposed to be smaller than the dwelling, and that would put us into the requirement for an administrative permit. That is not the case here.
Thank you. And one other quick question, I don't know if you can answer it, or maybe the applicant can, but with where they want to place the garage, do we know what the distance is from the house to the front of the garage?
One moment, please.
As proposed.
Yes, as proposed.
I'm sorry, I do not have that dimension on my site plan. It'll take you just another moment.
I guess where I'm going with this was you look that up, Roger, and it'll give the applicant time to think this over too, is what would prevent it from being moved forward closer to the house and therefore not even become an issue with the setback?
So if I may, no, we do not have that dimension called out in the application. And I discussed that option with the applicant also, and it would make it less convenient for accessing the garage door, is what I seem to recall them saying. But perhaps that's a question best addressed to the applicant.
And would that be convenience versus prohibited? Or I'll ask that to the applicant.
It would be a convenience versus a hardship, an inconvenience, I should say, versus a hardship.
Thank you. No further questions for me, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr.,
Madam Chair?
yes.
Unless you have a question, I
Mr.
have one more.
Stanley? Yes?
Yeah?
Go ahead.
All right. Roger, this is a, I think it's safe to say this question is out of the box. In the line drawing above the site plan on page 5 of 11, it's called a site roof plan?
Yes.
Okay. You have, or someone has drawn a line that kind of creates a triangle there of not okay part of the garage?
Yes. Let me share my screen.
Okay.
We can all look at that. I believe you should be seeing it now.
Yes.
Great.
So my question is, and I think what caused this is my home was custom built by a fellow who apparently didn't have a T-square. And I was wondering that triangle there, if the garage, and I know this is a kind of a peculiar one, but if the garage were shaped such that that triangular piece was not part of it, in other words, if it were, I'm not even sure what the design would be called, but a part minus that triangle, would that meet code?
Yes, it would.
Okay, thanks. So that's a weird option, but an option, right?
Perhaps something a little more conventional would be to square that off inside the setback so that the foundation would essentially be at the setback at those 2 points where currently it crosses. But yes, that
Gotcha.
is also an option.
All right. Thank you very much, Roger.
Okay, Mr.
Madam
Lawrence?
Chair, yeah, real quick, Roger, I know it's in the paperwork here and I've read it. That distance there that we're talking about inside the orange circle, what is that? Is that 9 feet, 9 inches or something again? What exactly was that distance?
10 feet 3 inches,
10 3.
leaving 9 feet 9 inches to the property line from the closest point of the structure.
So he'd have to move it how many feet forward? 9 feet, 9 inches?
10 feet 3 inches.
10 feet 3. Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
If I may, one more question, please, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Stanley?
Stanley. Roger, another kind of curious one. Is there any kind of relationship between that 12-foot halfway up the roof rule and the distance rule? In other words, is there any correlation between the distance and the halfway up the roof 12-foot rule? In other words, if you move it 5 feet, it's 13, or if you move it 10 feet, it's 12, or if you fill in the blank.
I believe I understand your question. I believe what you're asking is, if it were lower, are there sort of stepped setbacks? If you go to 12 feet
Yes,
in height, you get a 5-foot setback.
right.
But 15 feet and you get 9 feet setback. No. There is one, if you will, built-in variance in the code.
Gotcha.
And that is to say, side and rear setbacks in all of our residential regulatory zones are reduced to 5 feet, again, side and rear, for a detached accessory structure that is 12 feet or less in height. Otherwise, all standard building setbacks apply. In this case, 20 feet in the rear, 8 on the side.
Gotcha. So choose one, not some combo.
That is correct.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Pelham? See, yes, Mr. Large?
I apologize, Madam Chairperson. Roger, I had a question in regard to your staff report and in regard to the exceptional narrowness finding that you were not able to make. Based on the report, it says that the average width is 115 feet. But the narrowing of the front portion is at 48 feet, and typically we make a finding of exceptional narrowness at 80 feet. Is that correct?
Not exactly. The minimum average lot width is 80 feet. That is to say, the minimum average lot dimension is 80 feet.
So that's how we do it in code, is that it has to be the overall width, the average has to be 80 feet?
That is correct.
Okay.
In fact, there are several different ways that a professional land surveyor can calculate the width and depth of a parcel of land when it is irregularly shaped. This one, probably the simplest way, is to simply average the front width and the back width, which is what I did in both of these cases.
My question on the narrowness, though, is the house having to be set back from the street in regard to the setback because of the shape of the property? Does that decrease the amount of space that they can do, thereby causing an exceptional size argument? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I believe I understand what you're saying. Because the house might be wide, does it have to be set back further to be within the required side yard setbacks? I believe that I am still sharing my screen.
You are.
And if you look here, this is the front yard setback. This line here represents the garage. And as you can see, this is just a few feet between the front of the garage and the minimum setback. Because there is still additional room here on the, if you're standing in the road, the left side, and additional room here on the right side, actually quite a bit, no, this dwelling could have been moved forward an extra few feet and met the minimum front yard setback.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify for the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Large. Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Stanley?
Roger, I just want to press this one off. There's no code against any particular kind of pitch on a building like that, right? So if they move it to meet spec, it doesn't cause them some downstream problem about inadequate drainage pitch or any of that?
I'm sorry, the pitch of the roof? Or
Yes, if they lower the height, they're not running afoul of some code that talks about the the amount of slant on the roof?
This is a little outside my area. That would actually be building code, not planning code. But I am going to say no, as long as they have sufficient pitch for the water to run off in accordance with whatever applicable standards there might be within the building code. We have no planning code that would require that the roof must be of a certain steepness, or I have approved flat roof structures or
Sure.
domed roof structures. We have no planning code that applies to that.
And again, I was just trying to make certain that the recommendation didn't run them afoul of something that would prevent their completion of the project later.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Lawrence.
Yes. Roger, I got one other question, just to touch on that setback of the house to the line right there in front of the garage. That appears to be the setback minimum, if you will.
Yes.
So is that distance, less than 10 feet 3 inches? It appears to be.
Speculating, but looking at the ratio of, if you will, this distance here between the garage and the front setback line and this dimension, which is 20 feet, I am going to guess, speculate that this is probably 5 feet, maybe
Okay.
4 feet.
So moving the house to the very edge, 4 feet 11 and 3/4 inches, let's just say, would still put the garage in the proposed location, well, would still violate, okay, the garage could not be moved to the 10 feet 3 inches is what I'm trying to say.
Yes, the garage
okay.
can be moved forward 10 feet 3 inches and still fit on the parcel. The applicant expressed that that was inconvenient based upon the angle of putting a vehicle into the garage, into the detached garage.
So the usability becomes the inconvenience here. With the vehicle turning, trying to get that radius in there, maybe towing a boat, backing a boat in or something like that, I can see that would be a hardship for me, backing stuff up into things like I do. Okay, all right, thank you, Roger.
Certainly.
Madam,
Any other questions for Roger? Yes,
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
Stanley, go ahead.
it's a, Roger, Brad, this is I think a question of, there are actually two, but this is a question of clarification, I think. On Exhibit C, looks like page 4, there is a correspondence between, it looks like maybe the homeowners association and the applicant. And the internal correspondence says, to the architectural crew, we have received another ARC request. Is this, do you know, I know you look at these things and must, in a confined, through a straw, but is the one next door going to come in next month with this? It looks like there's several, implied here, we've got another one of these.
I couldn't possibly speculate, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
I could address that because I'm on the architectural review committee in my subdivision, and basically everything gets reviewed by the architectural review committee. If it's a change of a structure or lighting or landscaping, it goes before the ARC.
Great, so it might not apply to this particular
I
situation.
think it would. A new garage would have to be reviewed by the architectural review committee. That's what that stands for, probably.
Sure, okay. And thank you. And the last question is, and forgive me if this is repetitious, but what part of the building cannot be over the line?
The foundation.
That's what I'm waiting to hear him say. The foundation?
Yes, eaves
So
can
could you put a stem wall and go out
overflow
3?
setbacks.
I'm sorry, say again?
The eaves of the roof can overhang 24 inches into the setback.
Okay, here,
Foundation must be within the standard building setback.
but if the foundation itself were within guidance and eaves were okay, whatever you did in terms of, let's say, using some version of a stem wall and going back 2 feet for storage or something, that would be okay?
No.
No.
No, that would put an enclosed area of the building within the setback. No, only the eaves can overhang, not the interior space.
Okay, so I'm a little at a loss. Is it the exterior wall, or is it the foundation, or yes?
I've never seen anyone cantilever space out over into a setback other than like a bay window. So I'm just going to say yes, it would be both.
Gotcha. All right, thank you.
Any more questions? Seeing none, I will request that if the applicant is present and has a presentation.
The applicant is not on Zoom. I heard from them earlier, and they were expecting to be on, but I don't see them.
And they're not in the audience,
No.
okay? Okay, any other public comment on this item? No? You haven't received any other public comment other than what's in the staff summary? Okay, then, do we have any questions or let's
Bring it back to the board.
bring it back to the board and discuss? Yeah, I think it's a 2,000 square foot garage. That's bigger than my house. So, I'm not really seeing the hardship other than what Lee or Mr. Lawrence commented on backing a boat in, but I think you could do that if it was closer. It'd be even easier if it was closer. What do you guys think?
Secretary?
Yes,
Thank you.
Mr. Thomas?
Thank you. Having sat through this and listened to what has been presented to us so far, I have a couple issues. First of all, it appears that we're trying to put a square, or a round peg in a square hole. We don't, it's not up to us to try and find every exception that's out there. It's up there basically for the individual to present to the planning representative, discuss it, and see if in fact it complies with Washoe County Code. Following that up is, if Washoe County Code says X, but the HOA says it's okay, i.e. for land use, Washoe County Code says it can only be used for here, just because there's an HOA and grants access to it, doesn't make it okay by county code. And that's what we are bound by right now to make our decisions. In addition to that, like I said, I question whether this is a hardship or not. I know it was discussed earlier about the drainage ditch. The drainage ditch is not on the property, therefore the drainage ditch is not a consideration. What it boils down to is the actual, the perimeter of the property in which this, this garage wants to be placed. And I haven't really seen anything that would indicate an undue hardship presented in this manner. One other thing I noticed is going back to page 5, or page 5 of 11, when you look at the schematic of the drawing, what you actually see is that the double garage door is on the, and this is of course looking from the street, is on the right side, and that the pass-through to the garage again is on the right side. So it's almost a straight-in shot, not creating a hard left or right turn or backing something off. So I really don't see that that becomes an issue also. And not knowing the distance from the garage to the house of whether it can actually be moved within or the garage can be made smaller, in which this does not become an issue, are my concerns and my issues that I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, Mr. Stanley?
I don't think I would quarrel with any of Mr. Thomas's logic. There are some issues there that are troubling for me, and it's one of those difficult ones, and I know Roger knows it's a difficult one because he was trying to advise the people on the Zoom meeting about how things should work and how they're most likely going to work. The problem that I have is again, the idea of a 5-0 cab finding in favor, one letter from a next-door neighbor in favor, and the deleterious effect, the only deleterious effect identified in the proposal, in the excellent, by the way, package, was that the harm would be against that code in that instance. And as Clay points out, that is what we're here to decide on. But that's where I'm having my trouble. I'm trying to figure out how to thread that needle where the people who actually live there, the honest-to-God human beings, the citizens, get what they think is a fair shake and code's upheld too. And I think you've given them some ways of doing that, Roger. Thank you, and on their behalf, thank you. With a little lower roof and some adjustment, and the fact that you could, and something to research about the outside wall versus the foundation. Looks like there's some wiggle room in there, and there's some creative ways that this could be dealt with. So those are the things right now that I'm still at this point wrestling with, and that's the reason I asked so many questions earlier.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lawrence?
Yeah, it just seems to me that we're struggling over a roof height issue here. From, 12 feet to the mid-roof to whatever this mid-roof is beyond that. And the neighbors near there that would be impacted by view shed don't seem to be concerned with this issue. Plus, we've got a 50-foot wash between the house in the back and this structure, so it's further away. So it doesn't seem like there's a view shed issue there. It's kind of what it boils down to me is the roof height. And I'd like to have known what exactly the structure was to be used for. If indeed it's an RV storage area or something like that, I would be more sympathetic to the applicant's request for these, the setbacks here we're talking about. The CAB voted unanimously. I think there's some worth here in what their opinion on this matter was or is. And I'm kind of struggling, like Mr. Stanley here. I don't see a big problem with this in giving approval to this where it stands and not moving it 10 feet, 3 inches closer to the house, which I can't say that it would cause a problem. I don't know, because I don't know what the applicant intends the use for. But I am struggling with this issue at this point.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Thomas?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess one of my issues is if we are attempting to identify that there is a hardship, what has actually created the hardship? It's the size of the facility that the individual is asking for. And this is a 40 by 50 garage out back. Your standard depth length of a garage is anywhere between 21 to about 23 to 25 feet. This is almost double the depth of a standard garage in which you could probably put 2 cars end to end in there. So the hardship really isn't based upon or predicated upon the land. It's basically that the gentleman wants a large garage, and that is the issue, and that is his alleged hardship. It's the size of the garage, it's not the property. So therefore, I have a problem saying that under our current code, that there is some sort of land use hardship presented to this gentleman. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr.
Yeah, let me just
Lawrence.
comment. And Mr. Thomas, I agree with you. And that's why I say, and I'm going to go back to this comment, without comments from the applicant at this meeting, I can't really supersede your opinion on this and with my own. I don't have that ability to do that. I would have liked to have heard from the applicant, found out a little bit more, the reasoning why moving it closer to the house would have in fact created a hardship for them. Regardless of the size there, I understand what you're saying there, and I can't disagree with that. But anyways, yeah, I do understand that, and I do see that opinion, and it's, here again, it makes it more difficult without the applicant present. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stanley?
In addition to the cab and the neighbor and the, let's see, 6-foot difference in the roof line and so forth, we've had several dozen, maybe, applications that we've approved and denied in some cases for garages that are much larger than this. And so what a standard garage size is for someone who's not doing what they're doing, I don't know, for me, I don't consider that too impactful to my consideration. As Mr. Lawrence says, it could be for an RV, but as was stated by Mr. Pelham, they're repairing cars in there, so I don't know that they get to line them up in some kind of organized way. And it's their land to do as they wish. I see what you mean about the hardship, but I'm still having trouble with the 221 square feet versus the cab findings and what the neighborhood thinks.
I'd just like to point out that the cab doesn't have to, comply with the Washoe County Code. And neither does the Architecture Review Committee, neither do the neighbors' comments. But we are responsible for enforcing the code of ordinances, and I think it's hard to find the findings, make the findings for this project. And it does say in their application that it's for parking for classic vehicle, recreational vehicle, and other personal property. So, I think they could do that with a closer garage. It could be the same size if they just moved it closer.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know, but
If I
we're
may,
not architects.
if I may, I would certainly agree with the fact that they've been offered some options.
Yeah. Make it
I would
short.
disagree.
Yeah,
I
just
would
make-
disagree on what I hear your underlying thing is on the cabs. The cabs are instructed to give their feedback to the BOA to be input to our thinking process.
Right.
And very
Usually I agree
explicitly
with the
and
cab.
pretty frequently.
Yeah.
And they're very sincere about it, and it's their dirt. They live there.
Yeah,
So I've always thought that was a real important component
too.
of input to us, and it's our job, as far as I can tell, to act as a conduit in organizing that information up to the BCC. So our work product goes to them, and they decide. But we need to take all of the facts into account, and one of the facts is, in this case, a unanimous decision by the CAB, plus a letter from one or more local organizations saying they like it. I understand, I think, fully what Roger has pointed out about, here's the code, here's where it's not in compliance. But I appreciate your thinking on that matter.
sure.
One more thing? I
Yes.
do have the same concern Mr. Lawrence has, and do we have any indication at all why the applicant isn't here? Did they intend to be here? Is there a technical problem?
They said they would attend by Zoom, but they're not on, so we don't know why they're not here. It's from what I understand.
Thank you.
Okay. There's no additional public comment, so I would be receptive to making someone want to make a motion. Yes, Mr. Thomas?
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I move that after giving reasoned consideration of the information contained in the staff report and information received during the public hearing, the Washoe County Board of Adjustment deny variance case number WPVAR 20-0004 for Jamie and Jennifer Merritt, being unable to make all required findings in accordance with the Washoe County Development Code Section 110.804.25, that being number 1, special circumstances, and number 2, under no detriment as it applies to the purpose of the development code.
Okay, vote?
Need a second?
Oh, do we have a second? I'll second it. Can I second it? Yeah, okay. All in favor? Aye?
Aye?
What's that, Mr. Lawrence? Just a pen shake?
I'll vote aye.
What?
Nay.
Nay? So is it a tie?
And my reason, no,
Oh,
it's
did you
not.
vote yes?
3 ayes.
Oh, okay.
3 to 1.
Nay.
So the ayes have it, the motion
We
carries.
have 3 votes in favor, Mr. Lawrence, Ms. Hill, and Mr. Thomas, and 1 vote nay,
Okay,
And do
Mr.
I-
Staley.
Do I get to explain why I voted nay?
I mean, you can, but
I would like
that's
to.
up to the chair.
One of the things that
chairperson.
concerns me, in addition to everything else stated, is I'm uncomfortable doing this without the applicant or a representative here.
okay, are you going to abstain, or are you going to?
No, I voted nay because of
Okay,
that. Thank you.
thank you very much,
Because they
the
did not,
motion
because they
carries.
did not present?
Because they're not here to represent.
You're in favor of their application because they did not present? Is that what
I
you're?
am not in favor. I voted against the motion because the applicant was not here to present, was not here to clarify, answer any questions.
Right, and that's what I'm asking you is, so you are in favor of the application, that's what you voted in favor of the application,
I
because the applicant was not here to testify.
I voted against denial.
I think I can clarify this a bit. Give me a chance. I think that there should have been a discussion on a continuance possibly, but that's more beyond that now. And I thought about that.
Madam Chairman, just in terms of the open meeting law, we have the cases in question, in terms of the qualification of why someone voted someone, whether or not they should have abstained, or whether it should have been continued on to another meeting, or any of those things. Those all could have been possible motions that could have been discussed during the time that was discussed with the group. The motion has been, this item has been closed at this point because a motion has been taken and approved.
Correct.
Thank you.
I was trying to say that. Mr. Lard,
Sorry.
you beat me to it. Thank you.
I apologize.
Okay, next on the agenda is future agenda items. Do we have any future agenda items, staff? Is that Roger?
You're on mute, Roger.
I apologize. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
Yes. I was given nothing from Trevor to pass on.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any requests for information from staff? Seeing none?
I have one real
Oh,
quick.
I didn't see your
It's
hand.
just a question. Any idea when Mr. Toulouse's chair is going to be filled? Just an idea of timeframe, that's all.
Mr. Lawrence, or Madam Chairman, I could answer that. It was taken up at the last Board of Adjustment meeting, or last Board of County Commissioners meeting. A name was put forward, and it was not passed. That person was not confirmed, and there has been some discussion among staff, and I believe that staff is working to get that position filled expeditiously, hopefully at the next BCC meeting, but I would not anticipate they'll be seated before November, maybe December. Yep.
I've got a question in that regard, if you don't mind. Had Mr. Lawrence, for an example, decided in this vote to vote against denial, that would have been a 2-2 vote. I don't want to sound supreme about this, but who breaks the tie?
A 2-2 vote would mean that no action is taken, that it's deadlocked, and therefore, I mean, the applicant there would be no action from this board, and the applicant could appeal that decision or that application to the Board of County Commissioners. It'd be a deadlock, and that has happened on occasion.
Has it? Okay.
It's much better to have an odd number, no matter what board you have.
Mr. Large, is there any legal information or updates?
No legal updates.
Okay, thank you very much. Any more public comment, Madam Secretary?
We have no public comment.
Okay, I adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.